Are there any foods or supplements to help boost the strength of one's erection?
Yeah, so generally we think about anything that's going to improve blood flow, and particularly nitric oxide, which is the ignition for erections. So certain foods have been studied. So watermelon is one we know is great because it's a really high dose or high amount of citrulline. And so there's been studies that have looked at, like, not specifically erections, but the amount of arginine that comes from consuming watermelon. And so if you drink like 6 glasses of watermelon juice, you see a significant increase in arginine. Now, if you love watermelon juice, by all means, but if you don't, I don't like to have people be very fixated on a certain food group. I'd rather you work on your overall nutrition so that you're maintaining your health, right? And if you find a food that you like that boosts nitric oxide, for example, like watermelon, by all means, take it. But I wouldn't people want quick fix. They want one thing to fix their problem, and then they'll put so many eggs in that basket, right? And they're not working out and they're not doing the other things. And so, I caution in saying okay, these are the 5 foods you need, right? Because there's a lot of foods that are going to do good for your body. Anything with, vegetables, beets, watermelon, those things are all going to be good for you. But honestly, just making sure you're getting a good amount of vegetables, fruits, enough protein, avoiding hyper-palatable, unprocessed foods, right? Those are the keys to good health. And then the other stuff, add it in as you like it, right?
Yeah. I've always thought it'd be an interesting test to eat a big arugula salad.
Yeah.
About 30 minutes before sex, because arugula has the highest concentration of inorganic nitrates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be bad, right? First of all, you're not going to be super full, so that's a good thing. You're not going to be overly disgustingly full, so that's good, because that's going to, your blood flow is going to go towards digestion versus erection. So, you'll probably process that arugula salad. It won't be super filling. There's a lot of factors that go into it, right? So I'm certain that eating less and having a healthy diet is going to be good. But yeah, maybe if you like arugula, by all means, why not, right? Yeah.
But there's no such thing as an over-the-counter dick pill, I mean, is there?
There's not a lot of data and you probably already know this. There's not a lot of data in the supplement space in terms of really high level quality, randomized controlled trials. And even the ones that are randomized are really they have a lot of bias, or they're paid for by the companies, or they didn't actually report everything correctly. So when you really dig into the weeds, there's not a lot of high quality data, and there probably won't ever be, because people will buy supplements without high quality data, right? And so I'd say probably the one that has the most evidence is L-arginine. And L-arginine is not very bioavailable. So I generally recommend L-citrulline if you're going to take a supplement, because it then becomes L-arginine, and you can take it less often. But again, I think there's no quick fixes, and you got to sort of attack it from all different angles. And, again, we'll never have the strong data that's going to be yes, this is the one we need, and this is what you should be taking every day. And it's not the same for everybody.
Yeah. Is occasional sildenafil use healthy? Is that, or, because I mean, there are a few interesting things about Viagra. Of course, obviously there's the fact that it can enhance erections.
Yeah.
But there's been a handful of studies that have shown that it can, there's one study that found that it boosted muscle protein synthesis. So I know a lot of people, and I've done this occasionally. I've taken it pre-workout, which leads to incredible pumps in the gym. I'm not recommending that people go out and do this, but I've done it, and I thought it was great. And then I know that there's been this observational data showing that its use is associated with reduced risk for Alzheimer's disease, which is super exciting.
Yeah, so I think I say this a lot. I think tadalafil, a low dose of tadalafil every single day is great, because there is data that supports that it may actually improve cardiovascular health, because it's dilating blood vessels, right, ultimately, and it's doing that for the heart too. And there's some data that shows it improves cardiovascular outcomes. It's, again, not prime time, we're going to put this in the journals and be this is it. But there is some data. There's also some data that it, again, improves muscular blood flow to muscles. And so I think, yes, there's probably no harm in taking either a low dose of tadalafil every day, an occasional sildenafil, as long as you're not taking 10 of them, right? Because people worry about, this erection that's going to last longer than 4 hours. Now, if you take it at a low dose and you're having normal erections, you're not going to have a problem. If you take it at a high dose, meaning you're taking 2 or 3 or 4 of 400 milligrams of sildenafil, yes, then you might get an erection that lasts longer than 4 hours. And I promise you'll never want to take that again, because that's a really scary experience.
Very dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It will stop if after 4 hours, blood flow gets stuck, right? And there's no new oxygen going to the penis. So if you don't fix that, then you will start developing scar tissue in the penis. And so you have to go to the ER if you have an erection that lasts longer than 4 hours that's not associated with sexual arousal, right? And it has to be treated. And it sometimes can be treated with just taking medications, but oftentimes it requires us to actually drain the blood from the penis, which is, is not a pleasant experience, to say the least. And so I would never abuse medications like that, but I would say taking them as prescribed or a low dose is just increasing blood flow, and it's certainly not going to be harmful unless you're having side effects, right? Some people do get really bad headaches or flushing, or, with the Cialis or tadalafil, they get muscle aches, and then, I wouldn't take it. Like, why put yourself through side effects? There's other ways to boost blood flow, but if it's working for you and it feels fine and it's not causing harm, then by all means.
What about, there's a controversy around circumcision for men? Very controversial topic. I've no dog in the fight. I've no, I personally circumcised, raised Jewish. So for me, that's the norm. But there are a lot of people that believe that that there are certain considerations from a hygienic standpoint. I know, women sometimes have questions about it. In porn, you tend to see predominantly circumcised penises.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
So in terms of circumcision, it is a very heated discussion from people. And so a lot of people feel like it's natural to be uncircumcised, and it is, right? And it's totally fine. And they get upset when you talk about circumcision because they say you're, taking away all these nerve endings that will then decrease pleasure. In terms of histologic studies where they've taken those tissues and looked at the actual types of cells that are on there, the ones that create a lot of are very sensitive to touch and are very erotic are these things called Meissner's corpuscles. And those are mostly at the coronal ridge, meaning right underneath the head of the penis. And that's not going to be taken away during a circumcision. The fibers on the coronal ridge are just like the tip of your finger. And so generally speaking, based on an abundance of data of like thousands of men, looking at men who are circumcised versus not, even as adults, they did not see a cause of erectile dysfunction, change in sensation, or any really detriment to circumcision. Now, I don't want to diminish people who really feel like they did have a change, because there are people who feel like their life is ruined, they have no sensation, they have issues with erections after circumcision. It's a very small subset of people, but their experiences are real to them, and that's what they're feeling, right? And I'm not going to say that that's not true. I'm just saying based on the data that we have, that's what I can tell you. There is definitely, if you get a circumcision as an adult, you will have a change in sensation, at least acutely, right? Because you've had a gland that's been under foreskin for your whole life, and now it's not. So you're going to be hypersensitive for a while, up to 3 months potentially after a circumcision. In terms of hygiene, as long as you're pulling back the foreskin and cleaning the area and drying it and putting the foreskin back, you're going to be fine. You're not going to be an issue. The issue is when it doesn't get cleaned and smegma builds up. That's an inflammatory process, and then you can develop, the big scary risk is penile cancer. It's not common, right? It's very rare. I have absolutely seen men with penile cancer, and when you get a circumcision, that risk is essentially gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then there is, a lower risk of sexually transmitted infections. And that's why it became so prevalent in Africa, for example, for HIV. And so there is benefit to circumcision, but it's a very personal choice. And I think that you need to make it based on, your own discussion with your spouse and, whoever your partner is that has the baby with you when you decide to make that decision. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other.
Yeah, it is super interesting. I mean, it stands to reason that if you've got this super sensitive tissue that's been covered by skin for your entire life, it's going to be, I don't know, for lack of a better term, softer, more sensitive.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, as somebody who's spent their entire life circumcised, I've never not enjoyed sex.
Yeah.
And I would think that by being more sensitive, I mean, it would probably not allow you to, it would probably disallow a degree of endurance, sexual endurance. I don't know.
So they've looked at that in terms of premature ejaculation. There's there's not been a difference in terms
No difference.
of yeah.
Great.
And I think it's, again, you have what you have, right? Like you wouldn't know any different because you had it as a newborn, and like people who are uncircumcised don't know any different. So it's really not a big change in terms of when you look at population-based data.
At what age do they do it to Jewish boys? I should know this, but I don't know.
I think it's like 13 or something, right? I don't know.
Definitely not 13.
No,
that's the bar mitzvah.
Oh, okay.
The bris is when you get
That's
snip.
it's a little bit older, but not that much older,
Yeah.
right? It's, I don't know.
And I have no memory of it.
I don't know the age.
You're generally too young.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.